Welcome to Savage Kitchen. Today we are diving headfirst into AMARI. The singular would be Amaro. And Amaro is an Italian herbal liqueur. There are clearly a lot of AMARI on the market. This is just a small sampling. I've chosen a couple of things that are very recognizable, and then a couple of things that I was like, that looks cool. Mostly this one. I even have a few more back here because I went a little nuts at the liquor store. We're gonna taste these 9 and talk about the differences between them so that at home you don't have to buy one of every different bottle of Amaro, and can maybe figure out what Amaro can substitute for another, what types of drinks to put them in, or what might be delicious to sip on its own. So the first distinction we should probably discuss is the difference between an aperitif and a digestif. Fair warning, this is going to be an episode of me butchering all kinds of Italian pronunciations, so I'm sorry. So a lot of you are probably familiar with Campari, and maybe its most famous cocktail, the Negroni. Campari is often used in cocktails that you would have as an aperitif, something that will come before a meal. Typically, aperitifs are slightly sweeter, the sugar content is slightly higher, where a digestif is something that you consume after the meal, and they're very bitter. The bitterness actually aids with digestion, hence the name digestif. Interestingly, Fernet, which is also a very famous Amaro, is something that, at least in the United States, became very famous during Prohibition because this was not prohibited. It was labeled as medicinal. So Fernet was not an illegal substance during Prohibition. And a lot of doctors, science, because science, actually say that these things do aid in digestion. Basically what your body is doing, you have taste receptors in your tongue, right, that detect saltiness, sweetness, bitterness. And when those taste receptors detect bitterness, they assume that it's poison, because we're poisoning ourselves with these. And it wants to expel it from the body as quickly as possible. So it starts your digestion working to basically make things run through your system. So that is the medicinal purpose for a digestif, but we're just gonna drink these and enjoy. So the way we're gonna do this is I am tasting all of these straight, not in a cocktail. They're also not chilled. Well, they're a little bit chilled because it's cool out, but we're going room temperature-ish. For a lot of these, if you were to sip them on their own, obviously you would want to have it over ice, you'd want to have them chilled, and when in cocktails, they're also chilled. But we're just going to be real rugged about it today. So we're going to start with Campari. Now, I have an entire tasting episode on Campari and comparing it to Aperol, and which is another Italian aperitif. I'm going to pour each of these so we can also look at the color difference between each bottle. You can tell the sugar content's high. All right, so as you can see, we have a variety of colors. We have a variety of textures. Just in pouring them, I could tell the difference in viscosity between a few of them, which that's going to be our sugar content, right? I am surprised at seeing them lined up like this. I'm surprised at just how much color difference we have. In a lot of these, like, it's no surprise that the Campari is this bright, hot pink color, but I am surprised at how light the Nonino and the Montenegro are. But I think we're just gonna start with the Campari and work down the line. Ooh, that has such a distinctive flavor. It smells like an attic. Like when I was a kid, my grandmother in the attic, there were mothballs. Yeah, it smells like mothballs to me. I know, appetizing, delicious, right? Let's try it. So, with tasting Amaro in general, Amaro is bitter, but it's bittersweet. And so the first thing on your tongue with Campari is instantly that sweetness, followed immediately by bitter. There are citrus notes in this. Campari can be quite bracing, and I think unlike any other Amaro that I personally have tried. Of the bottles here, I've tried probably half of these. I'll be surprised if anything else really can stand in for Campari. A lot of people substitute this next one we're going to try, Cynar. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I think it's Cynar. A lot of people will make Negronis with this, which is sort of the very famous drink that people use Campari for. But I'm going to be very, very surprised if this tastes anything like Campari. I'm going to need water in between each of these because they are really, really bitter. Why am I doing this to myself? Okay, so just scent alone, this is not nearly as pungent as Campari is on the nose. It smells more mild. It doesn't have the citrus notes necessarily that Campari has. Cynar has artichokes in it, hence the artichoke on the label. Our most probably widely known drink with Cynar, I think, is the artichoke hold. I could be making that. That's the one that I know anyway. I've also never had Cynar, so bottoms up. Ooh. Oh, that's delicious. I don't know who's using this in a Negroni. I'm sure it's a delicious drink, but it tastes nothing like Campari. Like this is like completely two different worlds here. They shouldn't, I feel bad even putting them next to each other. That is not, this is delicious. It's sweet. I don't know that one could identify artichoke, but especially drinking it on the heels of the Campari, this is much, much sweeter. I feel like you can taste cinnamon and clove. Oh, that's delicious. Today just got way better. All right, so Cynar versus Campari. Cynar is delicious. Not that Campari isn't delicious. Campari is just very, very distinctive for that bold bitterness. And the Cynar has much, much more sweetness in it. That is absolutely fantastic. Love that. I'm curious to see, though, of the rest of these, what compares to the Cynar and could be substituted out. Okay, let's try Averna. Averna, if you're a fan of Steve the Bartender, I'm sure most of you watching me already know who he is. But if you don't, go subscribe to Steve the Bartender. He's amazing. The cocktails that he shows are incredible. And he did a cocktail just a week or two ago called what was it called? The Witty Comeback. And that was a cocktail that used Averna, which is actually what inspired me to go buy this bottle. I've never tried Averna before. I've had Averna in a couple of cocktails, but never on its own, because most maniacs don't drink Amaro on its own. Actually, though, in the US, because Amaro is not as popular here, in Italy, often people drink Amaro at the end of a meal, as we were talking about earlier, as a digestif just by itself. So after buying all these bottles, it's going to be every night. Ooh, okay, so scent-wise, again, nothing like Campari. Ooh, okay. Sweet, a little bit bitter. I would say as sweet as the Cynar, but more medicinal, more astringent smelling. This one's a little cough syrup-esque and not in the way that I love. I don't know how I feel about Averna. I can see how in a cocktail, this is probably fantastic. I don't know that I would sip this on its own, whereas I would definitely sip the Cynar on its own. Interesting. All right, we're going to hold on to the rest of this because I have a feeling I'm going to want to compare this to somewhere in this neighborhood. Next up, Amaro Meletti. This was an impulse buy at the store last night. So this is from the Adriatic coast. All of these, by the way, are Italian. I very specifically chose Amaro in general is Italian. Amaro is the Italian word for bitter, I think. I could be making that up. Let's just go with it, okay? That's not to say that there isn't Amaro from other countries, regions. There are American Amaros, but for our purposes today, we are sticking in Italy. So this Amaro Meletti, how does this smell? This one smells more herbaceous. Then the last two, again, medicinal, similar in smell to the Averna. So far, this and the Averna seem same. Ooh, okay. Wow. That's like drinking a bottle of perfume. Ooh, that is... So to me, that scent and that flavor, that perfume scent, it's rose water, rose petals. Very, very floral compared to the first three that we've tried. Yeah, it tastes like perfume. Not that I go drinking a lot of perfume, but it tastes like perfume. Amaro Nonino. This is one of my personal favorites. I absolutely love Amaro Nonino on its own. I like it in cocktails, but I like it so much. This is something that I personally prefer to sip just over ice. This has a very nutty quality to it. It smells so good. It smells like, it smells a little bit like walnuts and maybe a little bit of citrus. It's absolutely delightful. Depending on what you want Amaro for, I don't know how versatile this bottle is, but it is delicious and worth having in your repertoire. Oh, that is so good. To me, the Nonino is the perfect blend of something that is citrusy and bright, but also has the richness and just a little bit of bitterness of some of these other Amari. I really love the Nonino. Also, as far as viscosity, I think this one actually falls middle of the road. It could be deceptive thinking it is sweet, but it's not actually as sweet as the Cynar. Sweetness-wise, maybe somewhere on the Averna scale, but this is lacking the medicinal qualities that the Averna and the Meletti have. Absolutely delicious. If anything, I feel like these two are in a category together right now. These two are in a category together right now. And let's talk about the Montenegro, shall we? Okay, so the Montenegro, if you watched my cocktail video from just a week back, the old Sazerac, I used the Montenegro in that. I love this Amaro. It's rich. It has, well, let's taste it first before I give you my preconceived notions. This, to smell it, this also has a slightly citrus quality. And like warm brown sugar. This tastes like joy. Oh, I love the Montenegro. So now, imagine this, all of the qualities that I liked about this, the nuttiness, the citrus, that smoothness, and introduce some of the medicinal qualities of the Meletti and the Averna. So this is, I would say, more herbaceous than the Nonino. Not quite as herbaceous as the Meletti and the Averna. Different than the Cynar, but I could see subbing these. Like if a recipe calls for Montenegro and you have this or vice versa, I think that these are two solid substitutes. They do not taste exactly like each other, but I'd put them in the same lane. All right, next up on the list is the Ramazotti. Ramazotti. This, new to me, I have not tried this. I've seen it a lot. I was excited to find this bottle though. Right away on the nose of this one, I smell licorice. Interesting. What I like about this one is actually the description on the bottle. Drink Amaro Ramazotti means to enjoy the beauty of those spontaneous and authentic convivial moments. I just like that they use the word convivial. There are no rules when it comes to Amaro. They're all slightly different, but they serve the same purpose. This is something to be enjoyed after a meal when you're having conversation with loved ones and you're just kind of letting things settle. That Amaro is, not to get philosophical about it, but Amaro is sort of an idea. Amaro might actually be a liqueur, but the idea of sitting around and drinking Amaro is, it's art. It doesn't have any particular rules. It's just meant to be enjoyed. Apparently Amaro makes me a philosopher. Yeah. All right, let's give this one a taste. That's interesting. A lot of these hover around 30% alcohol by volume. This one is sort of unremarkable to me in relation to the others. I don't have a distinct flavor that's standing out above the rest. It is, that first scent is astringent. I'm not necessarily like smelling brown sugar or smelling a fruit, or even herbs. Good, not great. This one is not something I would sit and sip by itself, but it's certainly not offensive by any stretch. I would say this is only something that I would use if I needed generically an Amaro in a cocktail. I think it could stand in for any of these without quite as much depth. Not bad, don't get me wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with this, but this just, so far compared to the others that we've tasted, this is lacking some of the complexity, I think. Good, certainly a good option if you just need an Amaro for certain craft cocktails. I think you're fine here. If you want to really explore the complexity of Amaro and how different something could be, feels a little middle of the road to me, which that's okay. Some things just need to be average. Okay, our next bottle was yet another impulse buy. I genuinely have no idea how to pronounce this one. Amaro Cio Ciaro? Amaro Cio Ciaro? How would you pronounce this? Cio. Look at you rolling out Cio Ciaro. Somebody in the comments, please let me know how to pronounce this. Cio Ciaro. We're gonna go with Cio Ciaro. That sounds, Ooh. Right away, this smells more complex and a little bit more interesting than the Ramazotti. Ooh. Okay. And we're back. This one is delicious. This actually reminds me a lot of the Cynar. The mouthfeel is the same. The sweetness is very similar. Oh, that is delicious. I really like this one. That is excellent. I think this over ice on its own would be incredible. It kind of hits different on the back end than the Cynar does, and not necessarily in a bad way. It's got a little more oomph back there. Oh, that's why it's double the ABV of the Cynar. Wow, no wonder I like it so much. So even though the alcohol content is way higher on this, it really is reminiscent in flavor and texture to the Cynar. That's great. I love that. Okay, and last but by no means least, Fernet, the bartender's handshake. I have an entire episode dedicated to Fernet and its mintier twin, Brancamenta, which I adore. I'll put a link to that up here. Fernet, as we talked about in the beginning, has a storied history in the US since it was exempt from prohibition laws. Fernet is extremely bitter, sort of like a slap in the face. If you've never tried Amaro and you just want to like really screw with somebody, pull out the Fernet. It's very minty. I personally love mints. I like Fernet a lot. I love Brancamenta. But Fernet on its own is a lot. In Argentina, Fernet con coca is like the national drink of the country, but even they're not crazy enough to drink it alone. Oh, yeah, that hurts. It's just so bitter, especially since I'm drinking this room temperature. This isn't quite as torturous if it's chilled. And in cocktails, this is fantastic. It's adding seasoning to your cocktail. There is a lot of depth here. There's a lot of complexity. But there's also like a drywall component. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like licking drywall. It's bitter, it's drying. The mint, I think, is the thing that sort of saves it, and that's the thing that you taste most. Oh, and it burns. Okay, yeah, it was a lot. So we've done it. We've gotten through 9 bottles of Amaro. I'm gonna say that if you are wondering what Amaro you can substitute for another. I think the Cynar and this Amaro Cio Ciaro, is that what we're calling this? Cio Ciaro, this one. I think these two you can substitute for each other without issue. I think that the Montenegro and the Nonino you can also swap one for the other. They're a little bit different, but they're kind of in that same lane. The Ramazotti, if you just need an Amaro, and this is all you can find, I think it's perfectly adequate. It's the most, I would say, neutral of all of them. It's just bittersweet, and it's hard to identify what that bittersweetness is, and it doesn't inspire any sort of great response. I gotta taste this one again. I don't remember what this one tasted like. Oh, rose petals, right? Ugh, ugh. I don't like that flavor. Yeah, I don't like this one. That's just my taste, though. If you need something that's, like sucking down a bottle of perfume, by all means, go for it. Not my fave, though. The Averna, very, very good. However, more medicinal than the Cynar and the Cio Ciaro. My personal faves are going to be these two and the Cynar. These are my wheelhouse. If I'm buying Amaros, these are going to be my go-tos personally. So I hope this helped. I hope me torturing myself with bitter shots was worth it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If there's anything else you want to see me try, by all means. I know there are a lot of different Amari available, and especially regionally, so I'd love to hear what you have by you and what's good and what your ideas for substitutions are. So, take my Nonino. Until next time, cheers, friends.